In this video we'll cover the 7 habits of failure which might be hindering you from success. The first habit is frustration. Frustration is an emotional feeling that we experience when we fail to achieve an important goal or satisfy a strong desire. It's something that all humans experience at some point in life, and it's completely natural. We can withstand a certain amount of frustration, but if the frustration brings with it emotional dissatisfaction, it becomes a sign of failure. This dangerous frustration is often a result of having unrealistic goals that we can't keep up with. If you try to achieve too many goals at once, you're most likely set for frustration because you set your bar too high. It's therefore important that we focus on a couple of goals that matters the most to us. This will get us more focused on our main goals and less overwhelmed, which will lead us to faster results. We can then add additional goals as we complete one in order to continue challenging ourselves and achieving more. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't challenge yourself. I'm simply telling you that you shouldn't overwhelm yourself. We've all seen the people making New Year's resolutions every year only to fail them all within a month. This is usually because they start too many goals at once and lack the patience required. Improvement is gradual, so don't expect it to happen overnight. Frustration is not a problem as long as we keep it moderate and understand its function. If the frustration is recurring, it's most likely a sign that your expectations and goals are set too high and that you should slow down a bit. Once you truly realize that everything can't and doesn't have to be perfect, frustration won't be a problem of yours. The next habit of failure is aggressiveness. Excessive and misdirected aggressiveness follows frustration as night follows day. Aggressiveness is just as frustration something normal, and it's oftentimes necessary in order for us to achieve our goals. If we let the aggressiveness work for us and use it to go after our goals in a more aggressive manner, it can really serve us. The problem is that a lot of people let the emotional steam of aggressiveness build up instead of using it for the right purpose. After a while, the pressure of the emotional steam will get too high and start to seek an outlet. This then leads to uncontrolled or misdirected aggressiveness, which can be very destructive. Take for example, the worker who hates his job and feels like he's always being treated unfairly by his boss. With time, his anger and emotional steam builds up and seeks an outlet, making him want to punch his boss in the face, but he doesn't dare. Instead, when he goes home, he might snap at his wife or kid or kick the cat. Had he concentrated his aggressiveness and focused it on going after another job or getting out of that place, his life would be so much better. The answer to aggression is not to erase it completely, but to understand it and provide appropriate channels for its expression. Many people symbolize aggression with something physical, and any type of physical exercise is therefore excellent in letting go of aggression. Take a walk, go to the gym, or practice your favorite sport. Sports where you hit things tend to be the most effective, such as golf, bowling, or punching the bag. Another great way to clear your head of aggression and emotional steam is to write a letter about the person or thing that frustrates you. Leave nothing to the imagination, and when you're done, you shred or burn it, never thinking about it again. But finally, the best outlet for aggression is to use it towards a goal. Use it as fuel and motivation to succeed with that goal. The third sign of failure is insecurity. The feeling of insecurity is built upon the belief that you do not measure up to some imagined ideal. Most of insecurity is not the result of our inner resources being inadequate, but the fact that we compare ourselves unfairly. You can't compare yourself to anyone because it will always be unfair. You're not inferior as a person to Messi just because you suck at football, because you're most likely superior to him in another area of life. Realize that you and everyone else are unique and shouldn't be compared with each other. It will save you both time and energy. Another thing which can be connected with insecurities is passiveness or standing still. When you think of yourself as already achieved your goal, you become passive and lose that sense of security you had when moving towards the goal. If you convince yourself that you're good in the absolute sense, you lose the motivation to improve and start to feel insecure because you have to defend the pretense. This phenomenon can sometimes be seen in sports such as boxing, where after winning the championship, the champion becomes static and starts losing because his mindset changes from that of fighting to defending. After losing the title, he regains the fighting mindset and wins the championship yet again. In order to fight insecurities, you have to embrace uniqueness and stop measuring yourself to anyone else but previous versions of yourself. Always have the mindset of the fighter who works towards the goal, even though you might already have achieved it. The next habit of failure is loneliness. Loneliness is something natural that we all experience from time to time, but it's the extreme feeling of loneliness, being alienated from other people, that's a symptom of failure. This kind of extreme loneliness is caused because you're alienated from yourself and basically haven't found yourself yet. It can often but not necessarily be connected to some form of insecurity. If you're constantly afraid of what others might think of you, it will definitely inhibit you in social environments. This makes for a vicious cycle. Because of feeling alienated from yourself, human interaction isn't very enjoyable, and you become even less social. Social activities with others are the most effective of unleashing your true self and your personality. As we get to know people better, we become more relaxed and natural. We start feeling accepted, and the more this happens, the more comfortable we become with just being ourselves. The most effective cure for this type of extreme loneliness or social anxiety is to just force yourself to be social. It's like the psychological rule that constant exposure to the object of fear kills the fear. We just basically have to force ourselves to start being social with people. At first it will probably feel awkward and stiff, but if you're persistent with this social exposure, it will start to feel natural and enjoyable. The experience of others' acceptance will enable us to accept ourselves. The fifth sign of failure is uncertainty. Elbert Hubbard said that the greatest mistake a man can make is to be afraid of making one. Uncertainty is basically a way of avoiding mistakes and responsibility. The person might vision himself as perfect and therefore can't dare to risk being wrong. This results in them avoiding as many decisions as possible or postponing them as much as possible. Another reaction can also be to just find a scapegoat to blame for the faults and mistakes. This way you don't have to be afraid of decision making, since it's never your fault when something fails. As Gladstone said, no man has ever become great or good except through many and great mistakes. The fact is that we learn from mistakes much more than from success, and if you delude yourself that you never make any mistakes, then you won't have any to learn from. This is why the mindset of always being perfect is so dangerous. It will hinder our advancement and growth completely. We progress by acting towards our goals, making mistakes and correcting our course. Much like a guided torpedo. The torpedo also has its goal or target, and it gets to that destination by continually making mistakes and correcting its course. The problem of being afraid of the uncertainty is solved just like the feeling of insecurity. You have to truly realize that you don't always have to be right, because no one is. Every relevant mistake is one step closer to the goal. The next habit of failure is resentment. Resentment or bitterness is an attempt to blame our own failures on being caused by unfair treatment or injustice. A resentful person might see others succeeding and use it as proof that he or she is being wronged by society or life. Resentment may also be a way of making us feel important, which is one of our greatest desires. Some might feel better when they use resentment as an explanation of why they failed. However, this is purely imagination, because resentment is basically a way of trying to explain the past and picture it in our favor. And whenever we do this, we are wasting our time, because instead of living in the present and progressing, we're trying to relive and fix up our past. By continually practicing the thought of resentment, you begin to see yourself as the victimized person, and if you start accepting this as a fact, you'll develop one of the most detrimental habits, which is self-pity. This can really ruin one's self-image, and if you accept as a fact that you were meant for failure, it will become reality. It's important to realize that resentment isn't caused by any outward influences such as other people or events. It's caused by your emotional reaction to things. You alone have the power of your thoughts and how to respond to things, and therefore you can change your attitude to failure. Here you can see that it's deeply connected with the habit of uncertainty. Not being afraid of making mistakes and recognizing them when they happen is the real key. You also have to understand that you and you alone are the captain of your life. You make your own fate, and you're a product of your choices, not a victim of your circumstances. The last habit of failure is emptiness. As we've covered the other habits of failure, you might have thought of someone who had success regardless of frustration, insecurity or resentment. But don't be too sure yet. There are many people who appears to be successful on the outside, but on the inside are completely empty. Somewhere along their way, they lost their ability to enjoy. And when we do this, no amount of money can bring us to happiness or success. When you lose the ability to enjoy, you pretty much lose the ability to live. Everything is boring, and emotionally, you are already dead. One of the main reasons that we experience emptiness is because our creative function is inactive. Life becomes worthwhile when you're living creatively towards your goals. If you have no goal that's important enough to you, life will start to feel pointless. A lot of people get stuck in a vicious cycle of emptiness and meaninglessness. Creative living do require more energy than just avoiding the effort and continuing in the old habit patterns. You might settle with a 9-to-5 that you hate and continue spending every night in the couch simply because it's a habit. It requires no creative effort, and it's often more comfortable and safe. That's why a lot of people who get the taste of emptiness get stuck in this cycle. To solve this, you have to stop going around in circles and find some goals worth striving for, which are important to you. When you work towards what is truly important to you, life will become joyful. Thanks for watching this video. I'd love it if you gave me some feedback in the comments so I can improve these videos. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe.